Alright, here we go. Welcome back to the Agamemnon game review. Today we're bringing you the battle for Azeroth. As I started the video, I started recording already with the story in progress. I didn't get the first part of the recording, which dealt with Magni Bronzebeard, where you went down to Silidus and got your Azerite item, the Heart of Azerite, and then he sent you back here, which is where we started the recording. And Sylvanus has sent you to do a mission in Stormwind, and Nathanos here is going to lead you on that journey. This is the team he put together. Here we go. I miraculously got in the server without any difficulty, which is, I guess, kind of cool. The RNG gods bestowed greatness on me, and I didn't have to sit outside of the game, waiting in a long queue, which was good. I turned down the sound in my headset so I can record the voiceover. All right, here we go. We're just continuing on. This actually was a pretty entertaining part of the story. It's sort of built into the actual lore story, so it's not designed to be intensely, not a lot of difficulty in the tasks you have to do. Just pretty much have to follow along and just do what they tell you.
Listen closely. We will not be in contact once we have entered. Use the Lysra and
The whole point of this series of quests is to get you up to speed with the lore and get you on the way to the first chapter of the story, which for the Horde takes place in Zandalari. But it's to give you what happened after the Battle of Lordaeron, and the time between there and the time you need to get to Zandalari if you're on the Horde. Now, since I'm playing Horde, that's primarily the view of the war that we're going to see today in the video. I'm sure there'll be other people covering the Alliance side of the story, which I'll leave that to them. Now the Warlock that I'm using is one that I boosted up to level 110 so that I could play along with the Battle of Azeroth stuff. My main Warlock is only level 97 and she's still in Pandaria. You see there the server's stalling. I have to decide to wait for it to catch up. Our task here is to sneak into Stormwind Stockade. Those of you that are watching that are not familiar with the lore, I'm going to try to tie up some story notes as they occur. And we're coming up on two actual important parts. One deals with Sourfang, and the other one deals with the princess here that were trying to break out of Stormwind. And this actually gives you some insight that Sylvanas has been in diplomatic contact with people outside of the Alliance, people outside of the Horde. And if you read the story, A Good War, you've learned that, or we have learned through the lore that both the Horde and Alliance navies were badly damaged with the battle with the Legion. And so they're searching for allies to quickly shore up their naval assets and to expand their ranks. Now, in A Good War, it was reasoned, or Sylvanas calculated, that it would take the Alliance, based on current estimates, take them about 20 years to recover their navy in a way that they would be able to mount an offense to invade Kalimdor. It's one of the reasons why the Horde attacked Ashenvale and Darnassus, was by weakening there at Darnassus, the Alliance would lose their foothold in Kalimdor, which would be a severe blow to their military. Whereas the Horde, on the other hand, has 3 major military strongholds in the Eastern Kingdom. One in the north in Silvermoon, the other in the east. There's actually 2 in the east, one in where the Twilight Highlands. The other is the little port there that the goblins run. And then you have the one down in the south with the Strangle Vale there. They're all Horde strongholds. So strategically in the war, the Horde is sitting pretty strong. The Alliance is actually pretty weak at this point, both from a military standpoint, and their ability to move logistics around the world is severely hindered. Here's the story with Sourfang. I disagree with Sourfang.
I see. If you are certain, High Overlord.
I am Loktar. Come this way.
I'm playing the part that wasn't included when I started recording was where I selected what piece of item I wanted, and the one I chose was the little helmet there, and that applies better to a demonologist. Each of the 3 different items covered a different spec, so I chose the one for demonology. Those of you know that I love demonology. Though I like all 3 aspects of the Warlock, I do definitely like demonology the most. One thing that has been established in the lore up to this point is the Alliance threw a lot of their military assets into seizing the Undercity in hopes of capturing Sylvanas and ending the war. But they failed in 2 objectives. From a military point of view, the Undercity had no real strategic value, and other than it's where the Forsaken lived. Which,
We have come on behalf of the Horde.
yeah, he basically evicted them from the Undercity, but
Greetings will have to wait.
it didn't like hurt them. It didn't hurt the Horde from a military point of view,
It is a
but
nullification field.
it certainly hurt the Alliance in that they had to waste a lot of assets to acquire it.
Follow me then.
And then they failed their objective in capturing Sylvanas, so that was a huge blow to morale. I think for them. An expensive military operation that resulted in
This way.
failure.
That will be
It's a huge blow to morale.
the other way.
Which fits Sylvanas' long-term military objective is to demoralize the Alliance in a psychological way. It's the reason why she burned the World Tree was she felt that a psychological victory was more important than a military victory. Especially if the war went a long time, which is what she factored, that it would take 1,000 victories to conquer the Alliance. To conquer Stormwind. And unbeknownst or known to Sourfang is Sylvanas is the kind of person who would fight 1,000 battles to defeat the Alliance. It's where she's different than a lot of other military leaders. She's not lazy. And she knows time is on her side. Where the Alliance, on the other hand, a lot of their people are aging, and it takes a long time for their people to grow. A long time for them to train, so the Forsaken don't have that problem. As they never sleep. So here we are, we're going down this little corridor to get our next prisoner here. There's a part of me that believes that Sourfang isn't really defecting. I want to believe that he's part of a larger military plan, strategic plan here.
No one catches the
So even if he's doing it for honorable means, it's kind of selfish to put himself before the army. Because I get that he's about honor, but he's saying there will never come a time where his honor will be sacrificed for the army. Which is silly. If the enemy knows that you're never going to cross this line, then they're going to do everything in the world to make sure their military campaign revolves around that flaw, right?
out if the troll is to be believed.
Here's a cool scene.
The city is stirring. We cannot linger here for long.
For the darks, I'll be keeping us hidden. Long as no one does anything stupid.
Now, I actually
Just give the
did
word.
go out here and do something stupid, so, but I just wanted to see what would happen.
You got a death wish.
Attention, citizens of Stormwind! Horde infiltrators have breached the stockades. Civilians are to remain in their homes until the threat has been subdued.
That's what I say
By
about doing
order of
something
the king.
stupid.
I'm the star of the movie. We're supposed to do dumb things. That's
Stay focused.
That's what makes an interesting movie. Here are my talents, by the way. I definitely am playing in war mode because there's some cool stuff available to Warlock when you enable war mode. Two of them being stun, repellent, that's what I call it,
A death wish.
and anti-stun abilities, and then anti-magic abilities,
Horde infiltrators have breached
and a
the
couple
stockades.
cool pets.
Civilians are to remain in their homes until the threat has been subdued. By order of the king.
Wait here.
let this play out for a little bit.
Continue. Hey, move quick. Off the path. Let's cross at the bridge. Unless your prophet be having a problem with that.
Do not worry. We will know if his life is in danger.
Jump off the bridge. Now. Eh? Now.
One good thing about being Forsaken is you don't have to breathe. You can stay underwater
Remain
indefinitely.
alert. SI-7 has informed us that the enemy emerged near the keep. They cannot have gone far. Your vigilance safeguards us all.
Ooh, it's Anduin. Yeah.
A little more warning would have been nice. Clearly, you did not need it. We'll not be stopping again till we get to the docks. Say when you be ready. I be listening. Come back if you need me help. Let's go. Stay together.
Coming up to a little ambush here.
Guards. Zul is not soiling himself. It may be nothing.
Well, not nothing.
Chance to beat down on some Worgen. As a Forsaken, I look for every opportunity to beat down on Worgen.
There are too many. The barrier will not hold.
Kill them before they get through.
I have found them, my king. I will bring you their hides for a trophy.
Yeah. The old wolf got our scent. And we got to get out of here.
Look out!
We need to find cover.
Well, now, this will be useful. We got to get back to the canals. Follow me. You will want to wait here.
What is it now?
Marked grave will be all you have to show for it. We cannot fight her. Run!
Yeah, they be trying to box us in. Yeah, don't let them corner us.
At least got to see Jaina. Hey. I don't fear Jaina Proudmoore.
One would think that the city of stone would be less flammable.
You are a cruel enemy, Zul.
The harbor! We must press forward!
Jaina must have teleported over to the dock because I don't know how she got ahead of us.
Fine mess we're in.
Don't be acting like you're not happy to see us.
Delighted. Truly. Now let's move. On your mark.
Nathanos.
Watch your step. It seems the Alliance's consummate diplomat will not be taking prisoners this time.
Nathanos has a lot of big lines in this expansion. Usually he sits back and is quiet. He's like, finally I get to have a supporting character role. I actually get to speak.
That is far enough! She has cut off our escape!
Stop gawking and break through that ice!
You will not harm another soul in this city! Die, horde scum!
Jaina bringing out the harsh language. Scum.
Mighty Rezan, lend me your strength.
Notice that the Horde champion broke the ice barrier down. The Horde champion. Hard to believe that just like a month or so ago, we were fighting side by side with the Alliance. My, how times change quickly on Azeroth.
We get through.
Already taken care of. Observe.
I don't know what he was talking about. I ended up having to beat all these guys down. I guess he set all the stuff on fire, huh? Stormwind caught on fire pretty fast. They must have a lot of refugees scattered about the city too, with Night Elves, Gilnean, and Here we go.
Wait here. Listen, you clever moose, man.
I need 20 of those birds.
Notice again, it's the Horde champion that's knocking these guys out. Now Zul just standing over there. Watching. Just like a prophet. Valen does the same thing, stands around while everyone else does all the fighting.
Are they not pursuing us?
But I think I know why. Look.
Jaina.
You have slain many innocents to get this far.
Nobody's
Your
innocent.
little jailbreak is over. Surrender, and I will return you to the stockades where you belong. There, you will await the king's justice.
Respect.
Boo,
We
justice.
have a boat to catch.
Then perish.
Do not be so hasty now. You can try to subdue us and likely succeed. But do you have time to waste?
No, it can't be.
Seems a mage of your skill could be very useful right now.
This isn't over.
Too bad she didn't bring her flying boat to put out those fires, huh?
I know I helped them that cross you soon. I believe the phrase you are looking for is thank you.
Come, we set sail for Zuldazar.
Cecil.
I think not. I have orders to return you to the war chief directly.
Seeing as how this is my ship, I think you will need to adjust your plans.
We can discuss it on the way, Your Highness.
Zandala forever. Zandala will endure.
It's an awesome cutscene.
It appears the Alliance dogs have lost our scent.
Good. Our journey is almost over.
I hope the war chief's faith is well placed.
She seems very powerful. Certainly in control.
It is an honor to serve my queen.
My princess is also strong-willed and sure of herself. Our king has always found her to be challenging.
I wonder how trolls grow their tusks like that. Molars don't grow to that size. There's not enough bone in your
As always, you come
skull
to
to
ask your aid.
produce that.
I have sought the aid of the Horde, but my father may not agree with my actions. Advise me. You are the Lord of kings and queens.
My eyes see much. They see your boldness, your power, and enemies
is pretty funny. We know from the Battle of Darnassus, those horde cannons can fire like 5-10 miles. Pretty accurately.
We are home.
Oh, there ends the opening sequence. For the horde side, as we go on to the next. I consider once you talk to the king is sort of the beginning of chapter 1. This is basically the intro to that.
Do not test me.
Athanos. I like his dialogue.
Try not to get yourself killed.
There is much to do. Speak quickly. Vengeance for the fallen.
So we're taking down this path.
We have only a few moments away.
We're introduced to this general guy. He's kind of a
Zandala is beset by enemies, both within and without.
scoundrel.
This is why I went seeking the horde, and why I call upon you, one of its greatest heroes. Blood trolls surge across our northern border. They drag our people off to the swamps of Nazmir, never to be seen again. Meanwhile, there's an truly council. Scheming politicians and decrepit old tusks dismisses this threat. They convince my father that nothing need be done.
Princess.
When you left, you told your father you were going exploring, not negotiating with mongrels from the horde.
You are sworn to protect this kingdom. If you will not do your duty, then I must look for someone who will.
The best way to protect the kingdom would be for me to banish this thing to Voldoon. The horde has no place in Zandala.
It's a bit of a server stutter here. Decided to let it play out. Considering it was launch day, I only had about 1-2 server stutters. I consider that a success. Could have been a lot worse. A lot worse. I got about 3 to 4 hours of footage before I had to pause and process the video and get it all up on YouTube by tomorrow. Because we can't stream currently, we have to record the video, store it, process it with Adobe Premiere, and then upload it. And then that way we can recycle the storage for the raw video. You can, once the video is made, you can delete all that and free up all your hard drive space, which, believe it or not, AVI files take up a lot of hard drive space. Which is what Fraps uses. Dactyl. My first impressions, this is the first time I've seen Zandalari. It's a real pretty city. A lot of pyramids, everything's tall. The city is huge. Wide scope and real pretty place. The Horde always, in my experience with the Horde, is they send you to all these really nice places. And you always end up with the more like animalistic type people, whereas the Alliance tends to send you to places.
This champion defied the might of Stormwind to save Zul and me. Such bravery merits an audience, Father.
Enough! I will decide what to do with this outsider. Chakrazet speaks true. You seek our fleet's might against the Alliance. But my daughter is right as well. Rescuing her showed great courage, a trait I admire. Halanji worries that I do not see our true enemies. Know that I am not as blind as she fears. Let us see if the Horde can prove its worth to Zandala. Let them stay in the Great Seal as my guests. For now.
Only the Zandalari may walk those sacred halls. The law states.
The law is what I say it is, for so long as I am king. The eyes of the kingdom rest upon you, champion. This day, I name you Speaker of the Horde.
Look at that, Speaker of the Horde. I kind of forget what I was talking about. But wanted to let the video play out. But what we learned is there's a political rivalry going on here between the military, the government, the king, and the daughter, who's the princess there. And it's kind of led me to the decision of where I wanted to start. On the larger scale of politics, we learned that Sylvanas has been talking to different governments outside of Kalimdor for a long period of time. A great deal of the world is aware of what the Horde and Alliance has done, at least in the last 4 weeks. So, from a military point of view.
Do you need protection? I am sworn to defend the royal family.
What I was talking about earlier is the Horde tends to send you to places where you deal with, like, animalistic type people. What I mean by that is people that aren't really humanoids. Although Troy is technically a humanoid. They are bipedal. But you tend to go to places at the Horde where there's more like beastie type people. Versus the Alliance where they send you to more humanoid kind of people. Like when you go to Pandaria, the Horde, you're sent to negotiate with the baboon type people. Where the Alliance are sort of dealing with the Pandarians themselves directly. Which I thought is pretty fascinating. Because if you look at Azeroth as a whole, there are more non-humanoid species in the world than there are humanoid. Humans are only a very small population. And based on current politics, there's only one real kingdom of humans in the world. Lordaeron and Gilneas and Stormguard were all wiped out in the first war with the orcs. Well, Gilneas wasn't wiped out, and Lordaeron fell in after the third war with Arthas. But most of those cities, other than Gilneas, they've been either unoccupied or in a state of ruins, at least for 12 years in the lore. So longer than that for some of the places. So there aren't too many places where humans even exist in the world other than Elwyn Forest. North of that you have the dwarves, and then the elves were living on a completely different continent, and they've been wiped out pretty much. So the Night Elves are pretty much starting this expansion kind of like the High Elves did at the end of the Third War, where they were wiped out. And then they became Blood Elves. My plan for the week was to get this video done, processed, turned out, and then play again. I'm not really a type of player who rushes into things. I like to take my time and actually do the quest, do them in order as much as possible, and really explore the land and see it. So I hope as we go along, I'm going to try to keep every video, even though this is a much larger video, I'm going to try to cut it in 1 hour segments so they upload a little quicker, but they can be processed a little bit faster too. And I have to work tomorrow too, so I imagine by the time I come back from work, all this stuff will be processed.
Come, hero. Let me show you around. It is said that the Great Seal is one of the only things still standing that is older than the Zandalari Empire. My father keeps many of his treasures here in the royal vault. You can find your Nightborn friend in the Hall of Ancient Paths. Come see me when you are done looking around.
Princess Talanji was kind enough to inform us of an old portal network. We might be
Here's
able
where
to
Bane finally shows up. It's kind of cool. I was actually excited to see Bane, although I'm not like a fan of Bane, but
Oculate. See what you can do with the portal
much
system.
of the pre-patch he's
Release
been pretty
supplies
absent.
to the Horde capitals.
Although he's mentioned in Before the Storm, he's mentioned in
You seem to be on the right track for gaining the trust of the Zandalar.
the novella A Good War. And he has a small part in the Battle of Lordaeron.
And which Loa do you bargain with?
The Loa. I'm hoping by dealing with the Zandalari, they explain more of the Loa. And the story delves deeper into why the Loa chose Sylvanas to be war chief. That's never been fully explained in the story, and I kind of hope that they do.
May the Loa
Now,
be
since I'm Forsaken, I'm definitely pro Sylvanas. So, I support everything she's done so far in the war. And I'm glad in Good War they sat down and really explained Sylvanas' point of view, her thinking, her political decisions, her military decisions. One thing that I do like with the Horde side is you're really seeing the larger scope of the story when you're dealing with Sylvanas. Whereas with Anduin, the stories tend to, you get into like his emotional reaction, his emotional scene, but it doesn't really deal with his military or political decisions. Other than that, he makes a decision, but you don't really see the larger scope that Sylvanas and Sourfang dealt with in A Good War, and to some extent they dealt with it in Before the Storm. So far up to this point, my experience in the BFA has been really good. We're coming up to the end of the first hour. The story has been nice, and there have been high moments and low moments, which has been pretty good, I think. And when I scan through the achievement for the quest, there's no real... with the other expansions, you had like 4 areas you would hit and you could track and go through each. They don't really have that in this expansion. They're achievements, but they look like they're spread out and they're tied to the story more, which is kind of cool. I really want to get to the war or campaign mode more, because when I was introduced to Warcraft was back in the 1990s. I was 24 at the time. And that's my experience with Warcraft and then World of Warcraft. And for me, that's where the lore really begins. And I always thought of World of Warcraft as Warcraft, the 4th expansion to Warcraft, where I hear a lot of people are asking for a Warcraft 4. Warcraft 4 is called World of Warcraft. Yeah. That was the expansion to it. I had always thought when they were talking about launching World of Warcraft that the PvP system was going to be the strategic version of Warcraft, where you place all your people and then you go fight the battle. And I thought that that's how both the economics in PvP would work in World of Warcraft, is because in Warcraft you had the regular people who were in town and built everything, the weapons, the armor, they upkept the buildings, they got the lumber, they got the gold and other different materials. And then you had the warriors who were tied to the barracks, and then they would go out and fight the battle. And they had to eat and stuff. So I always thought that World of Warcraft would do that. And to the most part, at least in the last 13 years, it hadn't really did that. But now, with the introduction of the campaign mode, I'm hoping that that's what they're doing. It looks like that's what they're doing. And I hope they really bring the Warcraft back into World of Warcraft. Because I think at least in the last 13 years, it's been more about the world. And expansions and the stories have been fantastic. But you haven't really dealt with any of the Warcraft part of the game, which I'm kind of glad they're kind of coming full circle with that. Now I haven't selected my Azeroth power there. You'll notice a little glowing button there on the toolbar.
Time is short, so I will be brief. I plan to lead an expedition into the swamps of Nazmir to deal with the threat to our northern border. However, if you want our navy, you need the support of my father. Here in Zuldazar, his advisors plot against you. And then there are the schemes of Jakrizet in the deserts of Vol'dun. I have no doubt he is as big a threat to the Horde as he is to my people. We cannot be in all places at once. I leave it to you to choose your priority. Review your maps and decide which plan you will see to first.
Now, because I have OCD, I have this weird thing where I have to read everything. So I decided to read through all the different, the 3 areas that they have you go through. I decided to read through all the things before I made my decision. I'm kind of looking at the Azeroth thing because I selected the one that dealt mostly with the demonologist, and I didn't know which one of these 2 to take, and I felt this one dealt with more Pacific thing, and the other one, the first one, dealt with broader power, and I went with a broader power than the Pacific power. I feel with demonology, whenever you can get a passive power that improves your horde of demons, you should probably do that, and improving your secondary stats, I think it would go a longer way of doing that, because it would improve all your pets, not just one specific one. And in my opinion, demonology is the more tanky of the 3 different specs, and so I've come to see that haste and mastery are your big ones. Haste allows you to cast things faster, and mastery allows you to improve your pets. Make them stronger. So you really go a longer way in improving your ability, and where necessary, improve critical strike. Whereas as you look on there, I didn't see versatility, which I believe all that comes from gear now. Now with this character, I boosted this character because I wanted to be able to play the Battle for Azeroth. So I've been using it in the last, because I just bought the expansion last Wednesday, and then I quickly boosted, and so I go play all the pre-patch stuff and get the mounts. And so and I wanted to use this particular character to do all the Battle for Azeroth stuff, while I'm still leveling up my main horde Warlock, which is on the Dalaran server. This Warlock is on the Moonguard, which is an RP server. Real big RP server, and it's really nice way to level. Plus I have other friends on this server, and this gave me a first chance to get a high-end character in this area. Area being the server. Although most of all them are Alliance players, not really Horde. I love the Horde, I love the Forsaken, and I like being a Warlock, so kind of limits where I'm playing. So here I am, I'm gonna try to read through all 3 of these areas. So I read the furthest one out and the closest one to get a sense of what we needed to do. And based on that I decided that from a political point of view, our primary responsibility was to get access to their navy. So I decided to do the stuff closest to the town first. And then the second place we'll go is to place in the middle because that deals directly with what the princess wants to do. And then the outer objective is the far off land, which I think if we get the political support of the king, the growing support of the princess, by that time we'd probably have a good support with the government, and then that would better chance of knocking out the people up north. And I think that would go a longer ways to achieving our long-term political objective, which is to strengthen our military, which is important. Which is important to everybody. That's the win-win situation. So what we got to do is score some ports with the king, support the princess as much as we can, and soften the voices of the hawks in the government that are kind of against us. Now, what was explained to us early in the story was that the Horde had attacked this place years ago, I guess. And I'm not familiar with that battle, but apparently they don't trust us, so all our action has to be to help them. Now at this point I didn't really know where I was going. Trying to get my bearings. I had to go talk to King. Now me, personally, I don't like to load my quest pad down. Like, see there's 3-4 guys there with exclamation points. I normally do it one at a time. Now if one guy has multiple quests, and I normally grab those, but I always come back to the other people and do them one at a time. I don't like to load down my quest log. And that's why I chose to do that in that way. Some of you might be a person that likes to load up your pad with quests. I don't like to do that. I like everything to be orderly and organized. So I definitely did the king stuff first.
You made this mess, my prophet. Now go clean it up. As you will it, it will be so. Only I have foreseen that Ojamba will not die by my hand. Then take our new speaker with you and be done with it. Ah, yes. They have proven themselves useful.
Here's Zul, the prophet. Wasn't Zul the guy from Ghostbusters? The demon? Or Zul was the gatekeeper, right? Gozer was the demon and Zul was the gatekeeper. I forget the name of the ring. The gatekeeper, the ringmaster. But believe it or not, we're done with the first hour here. Coming up onto the second hour. A lot happened in that first hour. So now the story kind of quiets down now, and coming into chapter 2. So I came out here to get a look. It's a long way down. Notice the back of that pyramid is designed like Stargate SG-1. Is it SG-1 or SGI? So I come to realize this takes you back to the temple, the Horde High Command. One thing I'm hoping is that although the decision's probably already been made, since the Alliance has evicted the Forsaken from the Undercity, I think Sylvanas should move the Forsaken to Theramore, because they're probably one of the only people that can even live there. You know, it's the city of the dead, so. Oh, Jaina would love that. I'm kind of happy that early on we got to see Jaina. I'm not really a big Jaina Proudmoore fan, but it's happy to see her in the lore. Bane too. I'd like to see more of Bane. I would hope that the story sort of settles down now, where we get into the meat of the story, where I think Bane and Sylvanas, if we can see them working together as leaders, I think their relation would grow in the story. Because in Before the Storm, and even going back several novels, Sylvanas has a lot of respect for Bane. And on some level, she cares about Bane, because they were the first people who befriended the Forsaken. And they were instrumental in the Horde becoming partners with the Forsaken. And I think it's important that I hope that Blizzard tries to strengthen their relation, because I don't see why Sylvanas' political relation always has to be antagonistic towards everyone in the Horde. They did that with Garrosh, and it was important. He didn't want to hear other people's opinions. Whereas Sylvanas, on the other hand, she values other people's opinions, but at the same time, she doesn't want those opinions to sort of cause them to lose or cause them to delay their military victories. Which I agree with that. There's no reason that Sylvanas, at least at this point, now that we've actually gotten into the war, she's gotten what she's wanted politically. Things did not turn out as she had ultimately wanted, but she at least is going down the road that she wanted. And she didn't set out to burn Tedrassil, but at the same time, she had to score a psychological victory against the Alliance, and burning the tree really went a long ways to doing that. She had she knew they were going to lose the Undercity, but she had to make it to where the Alliance had paid a high price for it, in which they did. So here we are. It's our first chance to look at the map in detail. One thing that they do is you can scroll into the map now, which is pretty cool. I need to go down here and talk to Blightcaller on the is it the Windrunner ship there? So as you know, I'm an RP player here, so I do my little RP walk. And then it gives me a chance to sightsee. The music is kind of cool. It reminds me of Star Wars The Old Republic, where we went to the little pirate village at the end of the Kessel area. The Sith, you end up going to this pirate planet, and you have to befriend these pirates. I forget exactly why, but to deal with Revan. And this town sort of reminds me of that. Now, Lurchmanos, there, he's kind of a unique character in that it's one of the first real male characters I made in Warlord. Usually I always make female characters, but I decided that going into Battle for Azeroth, I would kind of break that cycle. And I like Z Lydia Marie. She's a really fun character. My Alliance character, who is my actual main character, the one that I've had since the World of Warcraft launched. She's Clytemnestra, and I've had her for a long time. But she's only like level 80 something, whereas Lydia Marie, she's surpassed that character, and she's like 97 now, but she's all the way over in Pandaria. She's still getting caught up in the lore. I didn't want to rush that, because there's a lot of good story going on that I didn't want to burn through all that. So that kind of prompted me to make this character and boost it to 110. Since I had the ability to do it, might as well boost it to 110. And then I could still play the stuff with the other characters. I don't have to lose their place, and I can kind of go on with the story. There's a little Windrunner. I know that's not the name of the ship, but I call it the Windrunner ship. This is where they sort of allude in the story that we're going to end up going to Kaltaris, but we need a political victory here first. This is where they introduced the concept of war resources, which if you play Star Wars The Old Republic, they have that in the larger galactic war. You on there it's on a guild and individual level. You can gather and produce war resources, and that contributes to the larger war campaign. And then the way they do it in Star Wars is that each guild or whatever can control, or the dark or light side, Jedi side, they can control different planets or different regions in the galaxy, depending on who wins, and it's a weekly event. So every Monday it's reset, and it changes based on what people did the previous week. Kind of hoping that the campaign mode kind of follows along that same process, but more of the Warcraft style of warfare. Also, too, as I'm walking along in the first hour, I got a better understanding of what Azeroth actually does. Now, because when I started playing World of Warcraft, which I've alluded to in a couple of videos, is that, but I'll quickly go over that here for those that haven't seen those videos, is that I had started playing World of Warcraft when the game launched, and not exactly 2004. I came along shortly after it launched. But I came along in the classic period, and I started my Warlock, and I played through that, and then I got to the end of that, and I went ahead and bought the Burning Crusade stuff, and I played through that, and then that's when, as I was playing through the Burning Crusade stuff, that's when Wrath of the Lich King was coming out, and so I slowly went through all those, and then when Cataclysm came out, I wasn't completely done with the Wrath of the Lich King stuff, but I had started to go to college, and I was in my 30s at the time, and I decided to put the game on hold because going to college, I wouldn't have a lot of money, and I didn't want to sort of I had to put a lot of things on hold because to stretch money out, and World of Warcraft ended up being one of those things. So I did buy Cataclysm, but I never played through the content. And then I took about a 7-year break, go to college, and after I graduated and started working again, then I renewed my account, which was in December 2016. And then when I came back to the game, I was already 4 expansions later, if you include Cataclysm, Mist of Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor, and Legion were already out, or Legion had just came out. So it took me like 12 months to kind of figure out with my Alliance Warlock what I was doing, where I was at, where all this new stuff was. and a lot of stuff had changed, and Warlock was a lot different. When I had went on my break, Warlocks were still using shard bags. We were still using the spec trees, and the high end at that time was only 85, I believe, right? 85. So 7 years later, everything's not too different, but it's different enough that it took me 12 months to figure out what to do with the character. So halfway through that, I made a horde character, and I read a lot of the lore. And at that point, I knew a lot more about the lore than I did when the game first came out. And so I made a Forsaken character because I always wanted to play a Forsaken, but I didn't really appreciate that how tied to Sylvanas' story that the Forsaken were until I came to the Forsaken High Command, because when you start off the story now, it brings you into the Cataclysm time period, and you end up at the Forsaken High Command talking with the Sylvanas, the Valkyr, and Garrosh Hellstream is still the war chief. And he doesn't really like the idea of Sylvanas raising the dead, and because his plan is to use the Forsaken basically as cannon fodder, so his living people don't have to die. It's basically it's what his overall goal was. And so and in case you didn't pick it up in his mannerism and words, they reiterate that when Sylvanas when she throws herself off of the Ice Crown Citadel and she's taken to the afterlife. That's what they show her is going to become of the Forsaken. So when you start the story off, I slowly found out that we were tied to her story, and I really liked her character the most in the lore. I feel from a character point of view, her story is the most tragic of all the characters in the lore. Yeah, Jaina in the Battle of Theramore, she lost her town. It was bombed. But as devastating as that was, it's kind of a small scale. It's really tiny compared to what happened to Sylvanas Windrunner in the story. And if you read through the story War Crimes, well, it's actually through 3 different stories. There's Tide of War, War Crimes, and then leading up to the Before the Storm. The Alliance really didn't know what happened to the Forsaken. And they allude to it in stronger language in Before the Storm. In that the only people that have first-hand account of what happened are the Forsaken, because Arthas is dead, and he didn't write a history of what happened, and Sylvanas pretty much hasn't really forbidden it, but she didn't want a reminder of their history because she didn't want the Forsaken to be reminded of their human past, because she felt that the humans thought the Forsaken is abominations and monstrosities. And what sort of drives her thinking in that is, after they gained their independence from the Lich King and the 3 lords in Worldcraft 3, the Siege Lords, she sent emissaries out to talk to the Alliance, because at that time she was still, yay, the Alliance. But then they murdered those emissaries. They butchered them. And so that's kind of what cemented in her mind that the Alliance were never going to be allied with us. And I'm reminded of I used to watch the old Batman series, and when one episode, he was kind of in love with Catwoman, Selena Kyle. And I don't think it was Selena Kyle, but it was Catwoman anyway. But And he told Robin, didn't, well, he had asked, "Don't you care about her?" And he said, "Cold homicide has a way of sobering one up." And I think that's true for Sylvanas Windrunner. Cold homicide has a way of sobering one mind up, who was naive at one point. And a lot of the reason why she doesn't trust the Alliance deals a lot with the politics of what occurred in Warcraft 3 and since then. So I feel, going back to my point with Bane and all that, I think that I wish that the writers would take a time at this point, now that the expansion's out, and if it carries through its natural life cycle, about 3 years, that they really allow the Horde High Command to grow as people. And I would like to see more interaction with Bane and Sylvanas as the story progresses. I have a feeling Sourfang is going to come around after he has time to think about things. In a larger context, that's kind of what war does when you think of it. From a literature point of view, is that characters in war tend to grow as people, and they grow in thinking, and they evaluate their thinking at the cost of the war, the consequences of the war and the benefits of the war. And I believe Sylvanas is the only one in the lore that has any real sense of what the consequences are going to be and the repercussions of those actions are going to be. Now, her aspect is that of an undead person, so her sense of morality is different than that of the living characters in the story. Here's another hiccup. This is, I think, our third one that we've experienced in about 2 hours, which I think is pretty good considering this is launch day. Now, you see, I went down, I talked to Nathanos. He gave us the thing with the war resources, and I decided while I was in this area, as I was walking back, to go ahead and knock out these quests in this area. Because we ultimately have to go talk to this guy. He's in the northern part, but I felt since we were down in this part of town, might as well just knock this stuff out first. Again, I don't like to load down my quest log. I like to do stuff one at a time as much as possible. Unless they look like they're going to be short, then I do maybe do 2 at a time. But I like to do it, go knock it out, and walk back, get another quest, knock it out. For me, that seems to be the most organized way to deal with quests. My favorite part of World of Warcraft are the quests. I'm not really a big raid person. I want to do raids, but I've never been in a guild that did raids. All of the guilds I've been in have all been small, and I've always wanted to be in an all-Forsaken guild, but they're hard to find, if they even exist. I made a Horde community, a Forsaken community, but at this point, I'm just a community at one. So anyone interested in joining an all-Forsaken community or guild, go ahead and contact me in the game. For free. One thing that I'm probably going to do in the game is I had a crazy idea of making all my characters alchemist. And to do that, they all have to have herbalism. But the idea is that the ones in the same server could mail resources to each other. And the ones, at least on different servers, you can't mail stuff to them, but it might make for a stronger trade system. And it makes it easy to organize when you're focused on one real thing, rather than trying to be the trade king of the planet. Although I haven't really decided what my second profession, or not profession, but class would be. I always wanted to make a Forsaken Shadow Priest. But I tend not to play it long. I actually made the character, but I haven't. I don't know what it is. I find Warlock to be really awesome, and I love playing Warlock, but when I start playing all the other characters, I tend to get bored of them really fast, and I end up going all the way back to the Warlock anyway. So Warlock is just a really cool class to me, and it's kind of what I like. It's laid back. It's not really a quick type damage dealer. It's more of a scope type of damage dealer. And that's why I like it. One real weakness that Warlock has, and if you play in war mode, you'll notice is like you have no real defense against stuns. And then they gave us some stun resistance with the war mode, but if a rogue or someone jumps on you and spam stuns you, there's no defense against that. You're just basically a sitting duck. Because all your stuff, or cooldown, none of your stuff works. I feel that if they're going to make it so people can spam stun, they should make it so that the spam resist can be spam too. And I feel that's, from a game mechanic point of view, that's fair. Then it's up to the person's ability, who hits the button faster. But if one class can sit there and just spam stun, there's no real skill involved in that whatsoever. Right? They don't even have to hit the button. All they have to do is just hit repeat on their keyboard and make a keybind of it. And it will just continue to cast it over and over again. The guy doesn't have to do anything but hit one button. I hope they nerf the hell out of that. Yeah. Either nerf the heck out of it, or if my stun resist has a 2-minute cooldown, then their ability to stun should have a 2-minute cooldown also. But Warlock doesn't have a whole lot. It's not a very, in my opinion, Warlock has never really been a, I would consider it a swift class. Especially in a Forsaken. Forsaken are normally slow. So, but Forsaken are supposed to have natural resistance to stuns and stuff, which you don't really see in the game. Because they don't have to sleep. Forsaken don't get tired. They don't have to eat. In the game, so maybe because they don't have digestive organs, but when they consume life, it's to reanimate their undead body. We're about halfway through the second hour here. Gonna let it play out a little.
What you want, rich man?
One thing I want to do in this expansion is I want to designate one night out of the week, like Sunday, where I just do old quest. Like a retro night. And then it'll be like a Sunday, and then all my recordings will be based on that. Up until we can actually stream from the PC. But right now I can only stream from the PS4. So, but I'm working on it. That's my next big purchase, is going to be external video port. Then I can use that on any computer, plus the PS4. I plan to get an Xbox, but the way I've designed my economic plan for the later part of this year is just to build a nest egg and then acquire the smaller purchase things first, kind of eliminate them. It's to grow a nest egg, and then like 4 times out of the year or once a quarter I make a large purchase. And 2 big large purchases I want to do is, one is the external video card, and the next is the Xbox, because the Xbox I can put on my large screen TV, my smart TV there, 4K TV, and Xbox One S has the 4K tech built into it, and it would allow me to run Twitch on the television, which my TV can only run YouTube, and it has a couple other apps, but I only really watch YouTube. And then Twitch isn't on Roku. YouTube is. So on the big screen I can only watch YouTube, but I just started watching Twitch about 2 weeks ago, because Quissy moved her stream over to Twitch. So did Alkalon. And I've been watching Twitch a lot the last 2 weeks, and I've had the ability to stream to Twitch and YouTube on the PS4, and so I've, even though my channel is really small, I decided to do that. To just do the initial stream on Twitch, and then the subsequent streams you can do on YouTube, because Twitch has the ability to export directly to YouTube. And so I think that would be a great way to do it. Archive it. And then the cool thing with Twitch is you can play regular music on Twitch, since if you don't archive every single stream, then you can then because the videos are only up on Twitch for 12 days, so by the time they research your video and say, hey, you got a copyright strike, your video will be off there, right? So that's why you see a lot of people on Twitch. They can play like regular music and stuff, and I think it would be better, and that way I can use my YouTube site more for videos, not necessarily storing streams. I like storing the streams, but since I've been